This is One Fat Boy, and here are my NBA game predictions for March 4th of 2022. Tonight there's 9 games. We'll go over the spreads and over-unders for each of the games. For Cleveland at Philadelphia, we're going with Philadelphia minus 7.5. I think the duo of, the trio of Joel Embiid, James Harden, and Tyrese Maxey, I think, been playing very well. Very hard to stop that trio, and I think Cleveland's going to come across that, and they're going to have a hard time trying to deal with that. Even though I think overall they kind of match up decent, like with Evan Mobley and just how Cleveland has been playing defense. I think they'll match up fine, but I think the league is still trying to figure out how to play against this. So I think Sixers are going to be too brolic, and especially playing at home. It's going to be too much for Cleveland to handle. So hence I'll be leaning towards Philadelphia winning, and covering spread of 7.5 I think is a reasonable margin for the Sixers, especially if they get going for like a quarter or a quarter and a half. I think too much for Cleveland to handle, as we saw in the next game. Then over 219.5 is, I think the Sixers will just have like one of those quarters where they're just on fire. They'll just turn into like a higher scoring game, and then overall I think Cleveland will keep it close in the first half, but I think this will be one of those games where the Sixers turn into another game in the second half. For Indiana at Detroit, going with Indiana minus 3.5. I think Indiana's overall a better team than Detroit. Even though Detroit has been playing better as of late, but I'll just have to lean towards Indiana, as I think there's a little bit more consistency there with Tyrese Halliburton. Pretty much, if you just have a better point guard than the other team, that's just easier to have them get their own shot and get others involved, which I think Halliburton is better than Cunningham, so hence I'll just be giving the edge to Indiana. We'll be going over 217.5 as Indiana, they can score the ball. Detroit has been scoring the ball better as of late. So hence I'll just be leaning towards an over in this game. For Atlanta at Washington, we went with Atlanta minus 3. So even without John Collins, I think the duo of Trae Young and Clint Capella, and then whatever role players decide to show up, I think that's more than enough to beat the Wizards. Honestly, I'd probably bump that minus 3, maybe a little higher, like to like minus 5 or 6 or 7, because I think Atlanta, just being like a better team chemistry and just having some better players overall, should be able to handle the Wizards, even if they're playing at Washington, D.C. It shouldn't be a problem for the Hawks. We'll be going over 226.5, as I think with John Collins being out, Atlanta's defense won't be as solid, so Wizards might be able to score few more points on the Atlanta defense, so I think the Hawks, like if Trae Young gets going, game over, high scoring game. And if he's able to get others involved, like for sure, game over. But so hence I'll be leaning towards the over 226.5, as I think Trae Young should have a good game. Like I think he should have like over 25, over 10 assists. So over 226.5 on the back of Trae Young. For Orlando at Toronto, we'll be going with Orlando plus 7. Toronto played last night and lost. I'm sure Toronto would like to win. I wouldn't be surprised if they win, but I will lean towards a closer game overall, just due to the fact that Toronto played last night. Tired legs, and then Orlando, if they just put on pressure, just try and out hustle Toronto, like that'll just keep the game close, especially if they get going from 3. Like, in order to win the game, got to score more than the other team. And if Orlando's making a lot of threes, Toronto has to respond and make the same amount of threes or just get easier buckets. But I think Orlando, the way they've been playing as of late, they tend to be high scoring. They also give a lot of points. So hence I'll be taking an over in this game for over 217, but I think their offense should keep them in the game. So I'll be leaning towards Orlando plus 7. For Milwaukee at the Bulls, go with Milwaukee minus 3.5, mostly due to the fact that the Bulls played last night. So with Milwaukee having a little bit more rest, and after that clutch win over Miami, a game they shouldn't have won, especially as of late, but they came back, found a win, and I do expect this to be a closer game, but I think Milwaukee should not be having to fight back from like 14 down with like 5 minutes to go. But overall, should be a close game overall. But Milwaukee should pull away at the end, as they have they're going to have fresher legs, and that's the most important part. I think Milwaukee has some of the best talent in the league. more than the Bulls, I would say. But they just somehow know how to choke games. So if you want to take like Bulls plus 3.5, that's understandable. But I think Milwaukee should win this game, like without a problem, just because they're fresher. I will be going over 222.5 as the Bulls. Honestly, tired legs, not known for their defense, as Ball and Caruso aren't there. Milwaukee should be able to score, no problem. But I think the Bulls will still find a way to score, as Bucks just have been giving up points like crazy, even though they can clamp down, but they just are choosing not to. But we'll be taking an over in this game. For Minnesota at Thunder, going with Minnesota -8. I think Minnesota is just a better version of OKC. Like, both are going to be scrappy on defense, scrappier on offense, but they're just both like young, scrappy teams. But Minnesota's just a better version. So Minnesota should win this. Like, shouldn't be a problem for them to win. -8, I see that as reasonable. Like, they can always pass it to Towns or pass it to Edwards or D'Angelo Russell, but most importantly Towns, to like get their own shot. Like, pass to them, they'll get a bucket. OKC, they can only do that with like Gilgeous-Alexander, because I wouldn't really lean towards Dort or like Sean Giddey to do that, but I can trust like Anthony Edwards or like Towns to do that. So just having more consistency on the offensive end, I just have to give Minnesota the advantage. Both teams are just going to give a lot of effort for like getting loose balls, rebounds, and all that types of that. So like X factor stuff like that, it's going to be even, but just having more experience on Minnesota, that should give them the advantage. High scoring game though, as it's a Minnesota game, so over 224.5. As especially if the Thunder start making threes like they did against Denver. Really, and if you think you see something similar like that happening, take the over for sure. But I think Minnesota will just backpack the over for sure. For Utah at the Pelicans, so I'm going to lean towards Utah -3.5, even though New Orleans has been playing very well. They're playing better than what their record shows. That addition of McCollum has been helping them a lot. So that's just another score you have to respect, and takes the load off like Valanciunas and Ingram, as you can have like a primary ball handler. But I think Utah just has more talent. They really don't got any injuries right now that are like major injuries. So having like Mitchell, Clarkson, and Gobert, I think that's a better trio than what New Orleans has on top of the role players. The Jazz are just kind of like the better version of the Pelicans, but Utah is more like team chemistry overall. So overall, Utah should win this. If the Pelicans do win this game, for sure bet on them to make like the playoffs, as they're going to keep up climbing the standings, and whoever they have to play in the play-ins, they're going to have a tough time trying to beat the Pelicans, as they're really forming together and beating some quality teams. But if the Pelicans lose, then it's reasonable, but I think the Pelicans will be able to sneak into like a 10 seed. But I will be taking the Jazz to win, though. We'll expect a high-scoring game, as Jazz games tend to not be so defensive, as Jazz can score a lot and also give a lot of points, so over 220.5. The Rockets at Denver. So overall, I think Denver should win this game. Shouldn't be a problem. But to cover the game by 13.5, I think that might be a little too much, even though I believe they beat Portland by like in the 20s. I don't see that happening again, as Denver kind of on a little skid. But I think Houston will be able to score enough to keep the game close enough for like 13.5. But I don't expect them to win. If you really expect Houston to win, like, be my guest, just bet them to win. But I don't see that happening. I see them staying within 13.5. And if they're going to stay within 13.5, that means they're going to have to score a lot of points, because they're going to give up a lot of points. So I would bet on like Jokic to have a good game, because there's going to be a lot of points, a lot of assists being thrown, maybe not rebounds so much. If you expect a high-scoring game, if all the shots are going in, that means not a lot of rebounds will be happening. But over 234, Houston plus 13.5. For the Knicks at the Suns, we'll go with the Suns -6.5. So showing that they can win with like a true point guard playing, and Cameron Payne, and even without Booker and Paul, they'd win by 30 against one of the bottom teams in the league. Because pretty much if they can figure out early how to slow down Randall, how to slow down Barrett, I think the Knicks are going to struggle mightily, as we saw Simons get like 11 quick points in the first quarter against the Suns. Then he didn't do much after that, as the Suns figured him out. So if the Suns going to do something similar against the Knicks, against their two best scorers, expect the Suns to win no problem. Because the Suns will just, how their offensive system works, it's just a lot of ball movement. That's hard to defend. It's got a lot of open shots. So pretty sure if the Suns hit their open shots, easy win for them. I will be going over 219.5, as I think Suns will be able to score on the Knicks offense. And the Knicks have been playing better on offense overall, so their scores have been a little higher. So hence I'll just be riding the train of over 219.5, just because Suns offense is always good and Knicks have been playing better on offense. Thank you for watching. If you noticed, or I just noticed now, I bet it over on all of the over-unders, as I have a lot of faith in scoring today. And once again, thanks for watching.